All right, we are here with candidates for Will County Board District 12. My name is Alex Ortiz. I'm a reporter with the Herald News in Joliet, here for Shaw Media, Illinois. We are here with 4 candidates who are running for 2 seats on the board representing this district. We are here today with Tom Weigel. He's a Republican from New Lenox. He is the sole incumbent in this race. We are also here with JoAnne Hamilton-Gunkel. She is a Democrat from Okina. We have Erin Moncek, who is a Democrat from New Lenox, and Frankie Pretzel, a Republican from New Lenox as well. Thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time. We're just going to get right started right with questions. So first off, Tom, we can start with you since you're the incumbent. Obviously, when it comes to truck traffic and infrastructure, those are huge issues that have affected many residents in the county. It's been a big topic of conversation here across all levels of government over the last several years. You guys in the county board have done a lot of work on this. If you were to be reelected, what do you think should be done from the county board perspective to both continue to increase economic activity locally, but also maintain quality of life for residents?
Yeah, the county is currently doing a truck route study. And I think we're looking at that. It talks about some of the major roads in the county. And I think that the trucks should be designated to certain truck routes and keep them away from residential neighborhoods, like the arterial streets, the state highways, and the interstate highways. They should be routed in such by this truck study to keep them away from the residential neighborhoods. We've gotten a lot of complaints. The trucks go down a certain road that's not built for trucks and they can't turn around, what have you. So we need to get the word out of this truck study to the truck drivers so they know where the routes are, so they can get to the interstates. And we had talked about the Iliana Expressway a few years ago, and it's kind of died, but I think that'd be an important component to get the trucks moving south in the county rather than north to Interstate 80. And it would also take some traffic off of Interstate 80, which is a big bottleneck right now if you try to get to the east side of Joliet to the west side of Joliet. So I think further study is very important.
Okay, JoAnne, you want to take it next?
I agree with Tom that moving Will County Forward study project, I sat in on a Zoom a couple of weeks ago, and they have really done due diligence to analyze all the roads and really alleviate some of that truck traffic with citizens' concerns. So I agree that I do think we need to maybe look for some alternatives. And I think it's a good start with that study project. And we know we live in a very busy economic area, and 80 is old and overtaxed. So with the capital plan and all the entities involved in that, I feel like even with infrastructure there being repaired, it still probably cannot handle the need. So I think we need to balance the need for economic development, being responsible, sustainable, so that we can keep our infrastructure in place and to serve the safety of all the residents in the county.
Okay, Mr. Pretzel, you want to take it next?
Hi, good morning. Yeah, I also agree with Tom. I know him and his team have worked really hard on these projects, and I support continuing the efforts that they already have in place, but I would also agree that we need to keep the trucks away from the residential areas, and I would look at additional ways to do that. I fully support widening the roads, Gauger and Lairway where necessary, and adding traffic lights and signals to improve traffic flow. I think they've done a great job on that, and I've continued to take Tom's lead on that. I think they're doing fantastic work.
Okay, and Erin, how about you?
Yeah, so this is something that I know in petition season, JoAnne and I heard a lot about as we were knocking doors. It was a constant concern of residents. Like Tom said, they're doing a great job right now with some of the plans that they have in place. And, you know, with the motor fuel tax money, where they're going to be able to fund these, you know, like a dedicated truck route, things of that nature. So I think we just need to keep up the hard work that they've already put into this. Residents, I think, could rest assured that the current county board is doing an amazing job getting these plans in place and bettering the quality of life for residents.
So I'm glad you mentioned the motor fuel tax, because for those who may not know, probably most people did know that the county board last year did raise the county portion of the motor fuel tax by 4 cents a gallon. It's a bit controversial, but obviously the justification was that the county has a lot of projects that they want to, road projects that they have to pay for in the near future and long-term future. And there just simply isn't enough money to do all of these projects. So obviously I'm going, you know, back in time a little bit, but Erin, we can start with you, just go backwards. If you were on the board, would you have voted for the increase in the motor fuel tax?
I would have, because we're going to see the county is going to see benefits from that raise. You know what I mean? They are doing a lot of work right now, like Tom just mentioned, with the dedicated truck routes. You know, there's a lot of changes going on with regards to the courthouse and, you know, updating some of the buildings. So this money is going to help provide services for our community that residents do need. And it's, you know, it's time for them to get a little bit of an upgrade here and know that their concerns are being met. And, you know, does anyone like to have taxes raised? No, not at all. But at some point we do need to kind of give back to our community and help push things further so we can get the services to all of our residents.
Okay, Mr. Pretzel, if you were on the board when this vote was up, what would you have done?
I would not have supported the fuel tax. I actually oppose it, and I'd like to see it repealed. In my opinion, that tax is a burden on our lowest income residents. It's a burden on our small businesses who have multiple vehicles out on the road every day, and they're feeling it. So what are they likely to do? They're going to fuel up in other counties or move out of this county or establish roots for their business in other counties. So if given the opportunity, I would repeal that tax as quickly as possible.
Okay, JoAnne?
Since I was not on the board, my opinion really does not matter. But at this point, I would say that it was a tough call, but I agree with it because of the fact that we have not seen an increase in the fuel tax in Illinois since 1995. And since we no longer live in 1995 or 2000, I think the only way you move forward, unfortunately, is through maybe some growing pains. And when it's going to generate hundreds of, maybe tens of millions of dollars, or however much it will generate, I do see that the benefits outweigh the negatives. So I agree that I think that it should stay.
Okay. And Tom, so you were actually on the board. And so maybe you want to tell people what you did and why you voted that way.
I voted against the increase. The state actually raised the tax much higher than what the county did. So we have a pot of money coming in from the state. And right now we've got a backlog of money in the highway department. We can't spend all the money that we have. We have a 5-year plan for fixing roads, but there's so much engineering and what have you that goes into it that you can't really fix them fast enough to spend that money. So I agree with Frankie. I think it should have been repealed. It's a burden on the people, the middle income people that work in the neighborhoods, in the cities, and the small businesses to increase it, since the state already did increase a large percentage.
Okay.
If I may add one thing, Alex.
Sure,
sorry. I think it's a shame that we added that tax to the Will County residents, in addition to us already being the highest taxed state with property taxes, second highest tax state with income tax, and now you have the 28-cent state tax on top of a 4-cent Will County tax. As I'm out meeting voters, this is front and center. This is the first thing that they bring up is they feel like they're being taxed out of their home. And many of them are actually relocating to other states and counties.
Okay. Well, I guess for you, Mr. Pretzel, and Tom, you know, some of the other explanations, like I had alluded to, was that in the long-term projects, the road projects that the county has to, you know, attend to, there were many, and at the pre-tax increase levels of revenue, there just would not have been enough money to pay for all those projects. So obviously, people don't like their taxes raised, but how would you have then, if you would have voted against the tax, or if you had somehow found an opportunity to repeal the tax, how would you then find ways to, or advocate for ways to pay for those projects so that infrastructure projects could get done and roads could be improved?
Yeah, I mean, I look at this the same way that I manage my finances at home. Can't always do the things we want to do, and sometimes tough choices are necessary. So if given the opportunity to serve on the county board, I would immediately start looking for redundancies. So for example, I know we have multiple county office buildings. Each of them have a purchasing department. Why can't we have a central supply center, or procurement, or central purchaser that does all the purchasing for all the counties? I also know long-term, we have a lot of county office buildings that we pay a lease on. I'd like to look at possibly owning our own buildings, building those buildings with good local unions doing the work, which will stimulate the economy and provide good paying jobs. I think just by eliminating some of the waste and redundancies that we already have, we could more than make up for what we added in that fuel tax.
Okay. Tom, do you want to add anything?
I think the county also has the RTA sales tax, which they can use for road projects and other things. And it is like a couple $1 million a month. And I think that should be sufficient, along with the state motor fuel tax, that we don't need an extra county motor fuel tax.
Okay. Erin or JoAnne, do you want to add anything or respond at all to what I asked them?
I do. I was just wondering if there was all this extra money that was available for the years prior, why none of this infrastructure was taken seriously by the state or by the county for that matter, because the corridor of 80 and 55 and just the bridges themselves have been a red flag for a number of decades. That's no surprise to anybody. Anybody that travels on the roads knows that. We are going to have an increase in truck traffic as we have all the intermodal units traveling. So I feel as though it wasn't done in the past. And I don't agree with the scare tactic that it is going to make people leave. And I think that people are going to choose to do what's best for their family and their financial needs. But if we stay stagnant as a county and do not perceive issues and attack them head on, then we're going to have bigger problems that cost more money. Just like in a family issue, if you don't take care of your financial responsibilities at home monthly and wait till 6 months or 12 months later, you have a bigger issue to deal with. So that's what I would add.
Okay. Erin, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just kind of echoing what JoAnne said. Like I said before, no one likes to have taxes raised. The motor fuel tax, is that something that I think would cause a resident to relocate from Will County? I don't know that that's necessarily accurate. I completely understand, and I feel for people. The middle class, money can be tight, and sometimes more than others. We have a young son who has a lot of health issues, and when those were going crazy, money was really tight, and it was a struggle. But I think with it being such a small amount, I think it's an okay thing to help our community better our roads and our infrastructure.
Okay. Change the subject slightly here, but stay on the general topic of taxes. Well, property taxes have obviously been a huge issue for a lot of Illinois voters over several years. Here in the county, I know county officials have, routinely been able to say that, hey, the county's portion of your property tax bill is relatively low, and that is very true. So I just kind of want to get a general sense from you all. How would you rate the county's, recent record on fiscal responsibility? And JoAnne, how do we start with you?
From what I know and who I've spoken to on the board and residents, I would say that most people think that the county's doing a good job. With less than 5% or so coming from our tax bill to the county, I think they do remarkably well in one of the largest counties in the state. And with the economic corridor, I would say maybe Chicago is the only area that surpasses Will County. So I think they've done remarkably well, and I would hope that we would keep that up.
Okay, Frankie?
Yeah, I mean, they're balancing the budget. I think that the current county board's done a fairly decent job with, fiscal responsibility. But with all due respect to my Democrat opponents, the 4-cent gas tax might not hit you guys, it might not hurt for you, but if you own a small business with multiple vehicles, it has a long-term effect, and they are likely to relocate to another county for their business. Also, I think it's a burden on our lowest income residents, more so than even us. They're feeling that at the tank. They've told me. So I think there's other ways to balance our budget without adding additional taxes, especially considering we live in one of the highest taxed states in the nation, and we're losing more residents each year than literally any of the other 49 states.
Erin.
Yeah, I mean, the board has been doing a great job working with a balanced budget. There's a lot of great things, great projects they have already in the works that are being funded with, the courthouse. So all we can do is hope that we help continue the hard work that they've put forth, and we can help them out there.
Okay. And Tom, again, you're the only incumbent here, so kind of, I guess, how would you grade yourself over the last few years?
Well, the last levy last year, the Democrats asked for the maximum CPI plus new property, that they both raise your tax bill. And I tried to amend the levy to take 50% of the CPI. So cut that back. That would have saved a couple $1 million. Now, you spread that all over, that tightening of $1 million in your budget. I'm sure you can look and find some places where that can be tightened. The budget is over $500 million. And they're going to do the same thing this year. They're asking for the maximum CPI at like 2.9%. And that's generating $4 million additional dollars that the taxpayers have to have. They say the tax rate is going down, but it still actually is an increase in your property taxes. So I'm not in favor of taking the maximum. I think they should scale back some of their budget. They're actually going to add 7 new positions this year in the budget, plus 5 new sheriff's security officers for the new courthouse. So that's a lot of people. We don't normally add that many people a year, so I think that's a problem and causes this increase in property taxes.
Well, as you mentioned, I think you guys have talked about this recently about those types of increases in the budget. You talked about the sheriff's officers that are going to work at the new courthouse, obviously the bigger courthouse. So I would think that their argument is they need more people to man that very large building. Tom, could you maybe speak more specifically as to what you would want to change if you were in charge in terms of saving money for the county?
Well, I think there's a redundancy, like Frankie mentioned, in different departments. You don't need a hiring officer in each county government, like the state's attorney, the county executive, the recorder, the circuit clerk, stuff like that. There's got to be redundancy in positions that could be eliminated and consolidate some of the operations.
Okay, and yeah, JoAnne, I was going to say, JoAnne, Erin, do you want to just talk, answer the question I asked Tom, or just kind of talk more generally to what you would want to do if you were elected to ensure fiscal responsibility and save money?
Well, I think the safety of people, either in the courthouse, so hiring more sheriffs to me would be kind of a no-brainer. I don't think I would challenge that, and don't see why people would, when you're dealing with the safety and what's gone on in some courts and others in other areas. And we've heard a lot about that as far as safety goes. I was wondering if there has ever been a county study, since Tom's been on the board for such a long time, if there's ever been a study to try to do some research into redundancy and how that might be addressed to save money. I don't know how to answer that. So I was just kind of posing that to Tom, if he knows if there's been any studies to try to alleviate some of that redundancy that they both have spoke of.
Well, Tom, do you want to answer that?
I haven't heard of any studies in the past or been involved in any. I don't believe they have, but I think they should.
Okay. Erin, do you want to also address this as well?
Yeah, I think, I mean, JoAnne has brought up a great point. If there is a concern that there are redundancies throughout the county, then there should be some effort put into a program or project, just kind of doing an overview to see where things could be trimmed up or streamlined. You know, I completely agree with JoAnne with regards to the courthouse and it being larger. I know a big effort is to just make it a safer environment for people. So that, you know, again, is a no-brainer to increase there. But with regards to other areas, then yeah, maybe it would be a good time for a study to just kind of get a better overview of where things could be streamlined.
Okay. And Mr. Pretzel, I'll just let you answer any part of that you want to address.
Yeah, I mean, I would fully support a study to uncover redundancies and trim the fat. As far as our budget goes in the new courthouse, I'm a fiscal conservative. I'd love to find ways to cut expenses, but under no circumstances would that come from the Will County Sheriff's Department. I think that's something we need to continue to invest in. They've endorsed me because they see that those are, you know, I stand behind them. Any talk of defunding the police or spending less is a non-starter to me. So I also think the current or old courthouse currently sits, I think we could possibly construct a county office building where we currently have our different offices spread out throughout the county. I'd like to see them in a central location where we can eliminate some of those separate purchasing departments and multiple copy machines and internet services and phone lines, et cetera. I think there's a unique opportunity there for us to invest long-term, own our own buildings, stop paying rent, and again, eliminate some of those redundancies.
Alex,
on top of that, sorry, one more thing, Tom. On top of that, it would create local union jobs, which I think would be great and bring economic development. So sorry, Tom, go ahead.
If I could add, now those sheriffs in the courthouse, they're actually going to replace the bailiffs. So it may not be an increase. It may be a one-for-one change. But I'm sure the salaries are going to be much higher in the Sheriff's Department.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Let's pivot a little bit to something else here. So recently, the County Board and the County Executive's Office have, especially in light of a lot of the kind of social unrest that's going on recently, they've been talking a lot about conducting a disparity study to kind of take a broad view of county practices, whether it comes to hiring or contracting. Specifically the contracting thing, I'm sure some of you have heard, it's a very big issue. Many people want government to involve more businesses, smaller businesses, businesses owned by women, businesses owned by people of color, to diversify and give those opportunities and create a level playing field, as I know the county executive wants, in terms of participation with and in government. So I just want to hear, kind of generally speaking again, what is the things that you guys would want to do if you were elected or reelected to continue to encourage diversity and inclusion and a level playing field, especially when it comes to things like hiring practices and contracting practices? And Mr. Pretzel, let's start with you.
I mean, listen, I think we live in a very diverse county, and I love that. I would love to see people with different skin color than me and a different sex than me hold all kinds of positions around our county. But I also believe that we need to look for the best people for the job. So do I want to invest funds into diversity counseling and bring on a new position in the county to focus on this? That's not a priority of mine. I'd like to see more diversity, but I think we just need to continue to educate our elected officials on the importance of it, but I would probably stop it there.
Okay, so you would not want to support like it's a whole study for the county to do?
I mean, I would support it. Yeah, I mean, if I'd have to look at what it's going to cost and what's involved in that. I don't have any problem doing a study. I just don't know if that would be a priority, especially if there's an expense to it.
Okay, great. Ms. Moncek, do you want to take this?
Yes, thank you. So, I mean, there's no doubt about it. Our country is at a very pivotal point. And I think what it requires of all of us is sitting down and listening, taking the time to have a better understanding of the needs of someone who might be a different gender, different sexual orientation preference, different race. So we're all living in this community together and working together. I would absolutely support a study to make sure that the community and the Will County Board is doing everything in their power to see that every single person feels seen, heard, and represented by their government.
Okay, Tom, how about you?
I wouldn't be opposed to a study, but I don't think we need to hire a full-time person just to administer something like this. We have state's attorney staff. They've got 50 attorneys or more, and we've got a human resources department, and they have federal guidelines that they have to follow, and I'm sure they do follow. I don't think that we're in a crisis mode, not giving out contracts to people who are not our minorities or what have you. I think we're doing a good job now, but I wouldn't be opposed to doing an overview to see, if we are following the guidelines properly.
Okay, and JoAnne?
Well, I think that I would be not a good candidate to answer that because I am a white female who has grown up in a middle-class neighborhood with the best education because of really good public schools, Mokina and Lincoln Way. And I am afraid that many people in our county have not had that. And I feel as though we need to get some more constituent engagement, not just in our district, but throughout the whole county, and feel what's out there. How do people feel about being underserved and neglected? Because I drive around this county and I see many out in Crete, areas in Joliet, and other areas where I feel as though they don't have what we have. Educational-wise, business-wise, it's a pervasive problem, not just in our county, but I have a son that lives downstate and I see that throughout the whole state. So I think it's something that needs to be addressed, and maybe a study would deal with that. But doing status quo obviously gives us exactly what we have. And that really underserves many of the people in our county that right now, after the pandemic is even over, are still going to be now not 5 steps behind, but 500 steps. And as a county board member, I would not be able to live with myself with that, because I grew up in a very, very large family. And my parents modeled, what you do is you give back to your community. They served their community in numerous ways. My father was on our county board in New Jersey. And I feel that you have to give back to the people that brought you along. And I have many people that have brought me along and brought my children along. We don't do this alone. I didn't come from a wealthy background, and anything that I did with help from other people as well. So I would like to give a outreached hand to somebody else and pick them up, because when families do better, businesses do better, our county will do better. And then I think that speaks volumes about we as a county and as a county board.
Okay, great. So let's talk about recreational marijuana for a second. So again, going back in the past a little bit, the county board essentially did not opt out of allowing recreational marijuana businesses within specifically unincorporated areas that you guys would be overseeing if you were on the board. So that issue's been resolved, but what hasn't been resolved yet, and it may be if there are new individuals on the board after this election, is how to use the tax revenue that the county gets directly from sales from the county tax, which I believe was only 3%, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, for sales made in incorporated areas in Will County. So admittedly, it's not going to be a whole lot of money. It's probably going to be in the tens of thousands, maybe six figures. But it does seem to be something of a debate as to how to use that money. Some people think it should go towards, healthcare and education. Other people have advocated for, I don't think they would like me to use the word reparations, but to reinvest that money in communities that have been disproportionately hurt by the war on drugs, for example. So again, just generally speaking, if you were elected to the board or reelected, how would you like to see that money spent? And JoAnne, let's start with you.
I think that has to be multifaceted. I agree that it should be concentrated on the people that have been most affected by this ineffectual war on drugs. And I think the opioid crisis that is happening and accelerating, it's gotten worse since the pandemic. It's continued to get worse. It's affected probably somebody in everybody's family. I do think that it needs to address the mental and physical problems that will come from increased problems with the opioid crisis, as well as underserved people. If you don't have good health, you cannot participate as a citizen and be productive. So I think that health should be number one, mental and physical health.
Okay, Tom?
I agree that the money probably should be used for resources for people that have addictions, either marijuana or opioids. The health department is involved in that, and we've got community centers where they can get free medical treatments. And if we dedicate it for such as that, I think that would be a good purpose.
Okay. Erin, what do you think?
So I'm extremely passionate about healthcare, and obviously with a young child that has countless health issues. It would depend on what we could do with the money, in the particular major arena of health. If there was a program or something we could invest in to help with addiction or mental health issues, or, maybe doing something with the Will County Health Department and making sure that children have access to services that they need, children who maybe aren't typically walking the quote unquote normal journey and who need a little extra help with therapies and things like my boys had to. So I would love to say we could take this money and fix this one problem, but I think there's a lot of different areas we could look at within the big umbrella of healthcare to kind of see what would best be served with those funds.
Okay, and Mr. Pretzel?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, it's not a lot of money, but in my opinion, we need to invest that money in education, uh, prevention, and treatment for people that struggle with drug addiction. You know, that's it. I think we need to reinvest it because I think that we don't really know yet what the long-term effects are of having legal marijuana use in Will County.
Okay. Okay. Another thing that I think comes up every so often when it comes to county finances, getting back to that, is basically how the board is structured and kind of pay for county-wide offices. I know this has been a debate for a number of years now that relative to surrounding county governments, especially for county-wide elected officials, their salaries are relatively low. But also specifically for the board, I guess it depends on which county you're looking at. All of them have very different structures in terms of how they make up their board. The current county board is made up of 26 members, 2 per district, as you all know. And I believe, and Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, the salary is about $23,000 a year. It is not really considered a full-time job, but there have been calls to possibly make it a full-time job, maybe reduce the number of board members to better allow members to devote time to this job. I'm sure, as many of you know, people have to kind of maybe change what they're doing in their full-time job to run for this office. So I'm just kind of curious, especially with this, we're in a census year. In 2 years, this could come up very much when it comes to redrawing of districts and rejiggering of the board. Do you think the current structure of the board, again, 26 members for 13 districts, basically part-time pay, do you think this works as the best form of county government? And Mr. Pretzel, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't support making any changes to it. I think it's important when you have a position like this that you're able to attract, retain, and reward talent. If you don't pay, you're not going to get qualified candidates to run for it. You're going to have less interest. If you pay too much, you know, it increases the burden on the taxpayers. So I think what we have now is a good system, but I'd be open to hearing other ideas. But no, if it's up to me, I'd probably leave it like it is.
Okay, Ms. Moncek.
I mean, like you mentioned with, you know, the census and possible redistricting in a couple of years, it might be time to look it over and see if this is an area where we can still make sure that people are represented and being heard equally. But, you know, if there is a concern as to how we could maybe cut costs or adjust things as needed, it would be something to look into. You know, like there's just so much going on with the census and redistricting that it could be time to maybe take a peek and see if there could be any changes that would, in the end, always benefit the community. You know, it doesn't necessarily need to benefit the elected officials. We need to make sure we're representing the community the best that we can. So it could be time for a study to look in that.
Okay, Mr. Weigel.
I think the present structure is fine. I don't agree that they should raise the salaries for the county board members since they are part-time positions. And I don't think they should be full-time positions. There's only so much that a county board member can do. We're restricted by state law as to what the county can actually do. And we're the legislative part of county government on the county board. So we just pass ordinances for certain changes in like zoning or building codes, and oversee the budget for the whole county. So it's not something that's going to take a full-time position. And I think if you've got more members, you get more representation. Whereas if you just had like 9 members or something for the whole county, you wouldn't get pockets of representation throughout the county. So I think the present structure, I think, is fine.
Okay, and JoAnne?
I totally agree with Tom. Kudos to Tom for saying it so eloquently. I agree. I think representation at the county level definitely should, no matter what happens with the census, should not change. In fact, I would think we might need more representation if we're going to have legislative positions that are going to change or diminish because of the census. I think that people will look more to the county, even though the county only has certain jurisdictions in certain areas, guaranteed or determined by state law. But I agree with Tom that we need to keep the present positions, keep them part-time. I think when you're out in the real world doing whatever it is you do, you would be engaging with people. You'll have time to engage with people. And that's important to the position, to be able to have time out in the community. And I agree with Tom, I don't see it as a full-time position, because to me that would not benefit anybody but the person that would be on the board. And that's not what we're here for, as Erin said.
Okay. I want to talk about kind of just the general polarization, political polarization in our country. It seems to have kind of affected all levels of government, including county government over the last couple of years, as, whether it was a big issue in regards to reproductive rights or gun violence. Anytime something big like that happens, it seems maybe there's some sort of resolution. Nothing that actually comes up for a vote. Nothing that actually changes anything legislatively. Obviously, the county doesn't, legislate any of those bigger, very polarizing issues, but they have led to some admittedly pretty heated debates. And I'm not going to ask you about any of those specifically, but I just kind of want to know generally, how would you approach working across the aisle, trying to reduce polarization and try to come up with actual solutions that won't end up in a partisan vote, and that you can get something of a consensus on without diving into just what our politics are these days? And JoAnne, let's start with you. How would you try to reduce polarization and work across the aisle if you were elected?
Well, I am a lifelong teacher, public school teacher. I've taught for 40 years. So I feel as though I have a lot of life experience in dealing with many, many issues with people from many, many different backgrounds: parents, administrators, legislators. I was a political activist for my union, the Illinois Education Association. And I feel as though I have a lot of experience in understanding complex issues that you would deal with and how best to resolve them with all of the stakeholders' voices being heard. And I feel as though that is something that's lacking right now, is that there's too few voices being heard. And I feel that in my district, that's why I decided to run, because I'm a 30-year resident and there has been very little difference in representation in my district. And I felt like my voice and people that I had spoken to, because I have been involved in community action since my kids were little, involved in schools and all kinds of activities that they were in. And I've continued throughout my career. And I feel as my life experience has taught me that you don't get anything done if you sit there and put your stake down. Everybody has to have a voice, and you have to come to some resolution. Not coming to a decision is exactly that. It doesn't benefit anybody. And talking about issues that we have no bearing or no decision on the board, I don't think there's a place for that. All it does is set up arguments. So I think you should stick to your task at hand, what you have control over, what you're supposed to govern, and you can have your personal issues and have your personal opinions, but they don't have any position in a meeting where you really cannot legislate on it, because it's a waste of time. And as you said, it produces unneeded polarization, which we certainly don't need any more of that today.
Okay, Mr. Weigel, I guess for you, both what would you do and what have you done to kind of reach across the aisle and reduce polarization on the board?
I don't think it's a big problem with our county board necessarily. I'd say 90% of the issues that come to the county board are voted on by both parties without a conflict. The only issues that do have conflicts would be like raising taxes, the budget, the levy, financial things. So the majority, like the zoning and the building codes, the health center, the various departments that we support, across the board, we're pretty joint in working together. And we do talk at our committee meetings and bring up things for discussion, and everybody has a voice, you know, about certain concerns that they may have, and nobody is left out. If they want to talk about something, they can talk about it. So I think it's working. I don't really see it as a problem.
Okay, Erin, what would you want to say about this?
So this is actually one of the biggest reasons why I decided to run for a political position. You know, it was becoming apparent over the last several years that politics is just becoming a very divisive, very angry arena. And I was talking to my son one day about, he really likes Martin Luther King Jr. And he looked at me and he's like, so Mom, if you don't like something, you really got to try to like be part of that change. And then it kind of like hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, okay, I don't like what's going on in politics. I need to kind of like step up then if I want to see a change. So I am extremely passionate, especially at this point in our politics, to sit and listen to people who have opposing views from you. I don't think that people are wrong just because they're Republican. They have a different way of looking at life than I do. And if there's an issue and we might not see eye to eye, the biggest thing that we can do is to sit down and have a conversation, a polite and respectful conversation where everyone is allowed to listen and ask the questions that they need to ask to get a better understanding of what we can do. Because at the end of the day, we're here to help our residents and our community. And if we just sit and fight over, you know, partisan issues, it's not going to get us anywhere. So the whole reason I'm running is to be a person who will sit down and listen and try to get the other side of the story that I may not know a lot about.
Okay, and Mr. Pretzel?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if given the opportunity to serve on the county board, I would represent obviously all of the residents of Will County and specifically Mokena and New Lenox. So I also agree, drawing a line in the sand, it doesn't accomplish anything, especially on issues that we're not even going to be voting on as members of the board. So I can also tell you that I've got a long career of account management, sales, and hired and trained many people, worked with many people of different backgrounds, ideologies, and just personalities than me. And, you know, I've learned how to work with people that I don't agree with or don't relate to. And I would continue that as a member of the county board.
Okay, great. All right, let's start to wrap up here. I was going to give you guys last, few minutes, just each of you to kind of make your own case as to why voters should elect you or again re-elect you to the county board representing District 12. And let's just go back again, Mr. Pretzel. Do you want to start?
Yeah, my name is Frankie Pretzel. I'm a lifelong resident of New Lenox. I have actually lived on the same street my entire life, which is kind of unique. 3 different houses on Joliet Highway. But I'm a lucky husband to my wife, Tracy, loving father to 2 girls, ages 11 and 9. I'm running for Will County Board because I believe I bring a fresh perspective and common sense values that I feel strongly will restore Will County and help to eliminate the politics of the past. As an elected official, I will demand fiscal accountability and oppose tax increases. You can count on me to defend law and order and fight for our policemen and women. I'm pro-union and I proudly support business development and job creation. I'm an open book, so check out my website, frankiepretzel.com, or find me on social media. I would love to hear more from you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, Erin?
So I know I mentioned a few times my children with health issues, and they were pretty extensive. I had to learn how to become an advocate. I had to learn how to navigate the crazy world of insurance and hospitals and doctors and crossing the country to get answers for your child when no one can give you answers. My children are thriving now, and that's great, but I learned how to be an advocate, and I learned how to be a fighter for people. And I want to take what I learned, kind of, taking what I can out of a bad situation and apply that to my community. I want to make sure that I'm listening to everyone, and I am advocating when there needs to be an advocate, and I want to make sure that I'm working hard to maintain communication and compromise where that is needed as well. And I too actually have been a lifelong resident of New Lenox and grew up on Joliet Highway. And I'm so pleased to be raising my family here. And I just feel the need to give back to my community and help and utilize the tools that I have to help our community.
Yeah, Lord knows it's very hard to kind of navigate health issues like that. So I hope they're doing well, by the way.
Thank you. They are. Thank you.
Great. So Tom, do you want to say why people should give you another term on the county board?
Sure. I've been on there for 15 years now, and I have served as chairman of the Land Use and Development Committee for several years. And during that time, we adopted new conservation design subdivision ordinance and building codes and water resource ordinance. And I received an award from the Three Rivers Realtors Association on the Green Building Initiative, which we adopted at that time. And I have assisted many residents with zoning issues and flooding problems. I've supported road improvements, intersection improvements, signalization to increase the traffic flow. And I supported the new sheriff's facility building, the new health department building, and the new courthouse. I'm a member of the local emergency planning committee, which is part of Will County, another department of emergency management. I'm a retired environmental engineer for the E.J.N.E. Railway Company. I also serve as a board member and treasurer of the New Century Federal Credit Union, which is located in Joliet and New Lenox. A member of St. Jude Church in New Lenox and Knights of Columbus. I'm a veteran of the Illinois Army National Guard and a former member of the New Lenox Village Board. I've been endorsed by the mayor of New Lenox and Mokina. I've had support from many county leaders, citizens, businesses, and labor organizations. I also volunteer at the Sunny Hill Nursing Home to help out in that area. Thank you.
Okay, Tom, thank you so much. And JoAnne, you want to close this out?
Sure, thank you. As I've said before, my husband and I moved here over 30 years ago, and we have raised both our grown children in Mokina and always loved this community with its great schools, its parks, and felt as though our family was welcomed and our children were able to succeed, have excellent education, go on to higher education, and be very productive members of society. And I have been involved, as my husband has, in all kinds of community activities. When the kids were growing up, I volunteered at the school. He was involved in Pop Warner. Both of us were coaches and spent endless hours for free doing what you do for your children. And I've been a fierce advocate for education my whole life. That is why in a family of 8 that my family has been all very productive members. I believe education is the key, and that has been my passion and continues to be my passion. I have worked tirelessly with moving our schools forward, volunteering, doing what I can as a scientist and a science teacher for over 40 years. I volunteered at schools. And I feel in this time, it takes somebody that can understand what people are dealing with and what the true measure of every situation is. So even though I don't know everything about every committee on the board, I don't pretend to, I will take it and research it so I can figure out every facet and every stakeholder that's involved and make the judgment that would benefit the most people. And I feel that change is needed in our county and in our district so that we can prepare for what's ahead and use the lessons from the past to do that. And as a woman, I feel like we juggle so much anyway. As I was always a working mother, I had a wonderfully supportive husband and father who ran his own small business and accommodated those hours at his business to be able to be a wonderful family member and father and husband. And I think that I'm ready to give back to the community that had served my family so well and want that for other families in our community. And I feel lucky that I'm running with another woman that feels the same exact way, that we've juggled so much in our lives every day and we do it without thinking. And I'm not saying men don't as well. I realize they do, but I feel like women are underserved. And I think it's time for women's voices that they should come forward because we do offer a different perspective. And I think right now, a calming perspective that is much needed. And I hope to be that calming candidate. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. I appreciate you making the time to talk to us and talk to your voters. So again, thank you so much to JoAnne Hamilton-Gunkel, Erin Moncek, Tom Weigel, and Frankie Pretzel. They are running for Will County Board District 12 in the November election. Appreciate you guys all for your time.
Thank you, Alex.
Have a nice day, everyone.